Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Cheat Meal presented by Deep Fried Draft. My name is Brian Bosarge. I'm going to apologize in advance. I've been a little under the weather for the past week or so if I sound off, that's probably why. We're going to go over the 11 games we watched a week ago, and we're going to preview the games we're going to watch this week as per our usual routine here. We're going to start with last Thursday. Hampton and North Carolina A&T. This was basically just a game for me to get a look at North Carolina A&T running back Tariq Cohen, and he did not disappoint. In this game, Cohen 26 carries, 256 yards, 3 touchdowns. That includes a 92-yard touchdown run. He's very explosive. He's shifty. Despite his size, he breaks tackles. He broke a good amount of tackles in this game. He showed an extra gear late in the fourth quarter on the 92-yard touchdown run that you just usually don't see late in a game. He has some pass catching ability. It's not his strong point, but it is there. He's one to watch going forward. I'll probably try to get one or two more looks of him as we go, and definitely want to see him in an All-Star game. Also, from Thursday night was Kansas and Texas Tech. I had a couple of DBs to look at for Kansas. One, Fish Smithson, did have an interception. Guy that stood out to me for Kansas was junior tight end Ben Johnson, number 84, 6'5", 245. Showed some ability there, one to file away for the future. For Texas Tech, I focused on their junior quarterback Patrick Mahomes. He has ability, but he's just sloppy mechanics. I mean, he's constantly throwing off his back foot. He doesn't have very good pocket presence. When his protection breaks down, it's all over. He's accurate when he sets his feet. He's got a nice arm strength, but not great. He was injured in the second half. What I'm told is an AC sprain. Probably week to week, may not play this week, maybe back from when they played West Virginia. Friday night, Stanford at Washington, and whoo boy, did Washington put the beat down on the Cardinal. The Husky defense was incredible. They had 8 sacks in this game, and the craziest part of that was none of them came on a blitz. 4-man rush only, they record 8 sacks. Incredible. Junior cornerback Sidney Jones had the receivers he was covering on lockdown. Now, I will point out Stanford was down several starters, but it still shouldn't have resulted in a 44-6 loss. Christian McCaffrey only had 49 yards rushing for Stanford. Some guys I didn't have on the radar for Washington before this game, I do now. Junior wide receiver John Ross, 5'11", 190. He wears number 1, and he flies. This kid is a burner. Speed. Senior outside linebacker, 6'4", 231, Psalm Wuching, wears number 28. He had a good game for the Huskies. And 2 defensive tackles. They actually, one of them, number 50, Vita Villa, is a redshirt sophomore, 6'5", 332, actually lines up at 5 technique at times in their defense. Number 99 is another redshirt sophomore defensive tackle, Greg Gaines, 6'2", 318. He also had a good game. Saturday morning, Iowa State hosted Baylor. Katie Cannon, the top prospect for Baylor, wide receiver, did not play. Their running back, however, Shock Linwood, had a huge day on the ground. 25 carries, 237, and 1 touchdown. Iowa State, their top prospect is junior wide receiver Alan Lazard. He only had 3 catches, but you can see his potential to make plays. I didn't see much of his special teams work, but his receiving, he had a couple of big receptions actually called back for penalty. Illinois and the Nebraska defense just completely shut down Illinois. Illinois only had 270 yards of offense. I was looking mostly at their senior quarterback, Wes Lunt. He was not very impressive in this football game. Minnesota and Penn State, I thought senior Minnesota cornerback Jalen Myrick, for the most part, did a good job on Penn State junior wide receiver Chris Godwin. Godwin did make a couple of big catches down the stretch, however. Minnesota quarterback Mitch Leidner was very indecisive, made some really nice throws, but on third downs he was just not very efficient in this game. Texas A&M and South Carolina. South Carolina sophomore tight end, but draft eligible tight end Hayden Hurst continues to be the go-to target for the South Carolina quarterbacks, probably out of necessity, as South Carolina's top 3 receivers in this game didn't play. For Texas A&M, they were down superstar defensive end Myles Garrett. He didn't play. Neither did receivers Ricky Seals-Jones or Speedy Noyle. All were left back. Kevin Sumlin said that this is the longest road trip for the Aggies this season, and they didn't want to risk knee swelling on the long plane ride. I get it. In Garrett's place, senior defensive end Deshaun Hall, 6 tackles, 3.5 for loss, and 2 sacks, more than made up for it there. Western Michigan and Central Michigan, I thought Cooper Rush, the quarterback for Central Michigan, struggled. He struggled through there in this game. Western Michigan, they stayed unbeaten, and they're now actually ranked in the top 25. Their potential top 100 receiver, Corey Davis, didn't disappoint. He showed nice body control and nice speed. He had 6 catches, 2 touchdowns, 72 yards receiving. He's also now the all-time leading receiver in MAC conference history. So congrats to him on that. Louisville and Clemson, what a game. Came down to the wire. Louisville comes up a yard short. When their receiver Staples just made a mistake, ran out of bounds on 4th and 17. He runs out of bounds 1 yard short. He's either got to take on the defender or he's got to cut back inside, but you can't go out of bounds there. Clemson junior quarterback Deshaun Watson, right now the #1 quarterback prospect for this draft, was very up and down in this game. He completed 61% of his passes, 306 yards. He threw 5 touchdowns, but he had some boneheaded interceptions. He had three interceptions total in this game. A couple were just really bad. I was also really impressed with their junior running back Wayne Gallman. And senior tight end Jordan Leggett moves very good in the open field. I was very impressed with him. I think it's a 3-way battle for the #1 tight end spot in this draft between O.J. Howard, Jordan Leggett, and Jake Butt from Michigan. Moving on to San Diego State and South Alabama. Turnovers, special teams errors cost the Aztecs a shot at an undefeated season and a potential New Year's Six bowl game in this one, as they lose to South Alabama for the 2nd year in a row. They had a 13-game winning streak that was bookended by losses to South Alabama. Senior running back Donnell Pumphrey had another 151 yards in this game for the Aztecs. South Alabama senior tight end Gerald Everett, he showed some breakaway speed I didn't know he had. In the 3rd quarter, he caught a little out pass and took it upfield for 79 yards. He finished the game with 5 catches for 103 and a touchdown. I had put down to watch Fresno State and UNLV, mainly to get another look at UNLV junior quarterback Johnny Stanton, but who I found out injured his knee last week and is out 3 to 4 weeks. So I bailed on this game, and instead I added North Carolina and Florida State. In that game, earlier this season, I'd watched North Carolina against Georgia, and Mitch Trubisky had not a very good game, and I'd kind of written him off. I'd heard a lot of hype about him coming into the season, but that game, he was a letdown. Since that game, he's completing 80% of his passes. In this game, he was 31 of 38 for 405 yards and 3 touchdowns. I know at least one FSU fan who's about ready to pull the plug on Noles defense coordinator Charles Kelly, as their defense has been a huge letdown in the last 3 weeks against Louisville, South Florida, and now North Carolina. And even then, it still took a 54-yard walk-off field goal for North Carolina to win it. Dalvin Cook, he continues to be sensational. He had 35 touches in this game for 246 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Dalvin Cook will continue to be my top running back and top 5 overall player for next year's draft. Excuse me. Now we move on to our games we're going to watch this week, and we're going to start Thursday night, 7 p.m. on the CBS Sports Network, where it'll be Western Kentucky at Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech on offense, we're going to look for slot receiver number 5, senior Trent Taylor, very highly productive player. We're also going to get a look at senior left tackle number 75, Darrell Brown. For Western Kentucky, their top prospect, offensive tackle Forrest Lamp, still nursing an injury. Excuse me. So he'll be out for this game. Friday night, 7 p.m. on ESPNU. Tulane at UCF. This is one of several games that are on the docket for me this week that are being threatened by Hurricane Matthew. And if you haven't heard, Hurricane Matthew's in the Caribbean right now, about to make its way up the eastern seaboard, and could wreak havoc on a lot of games to be played Friday and Saturday. We'll speak of the games when we get to them. For UCF, their top prospect for me at the moment is senior cornerback Shaquille Griffin. For Tulane, they have potential top 100 prospect defensive tackle Tanzel Smart. It's going to be my first look at him, but I've heard nothing but great things about him through the from various draft people that I respect. Saturday, 11 a.m. ESPN News, East Carolina at USF, and it's another potential weather game. For me, it's going to be my first look at UCF this season. Number 5, junior running back Marlon Mack is a phenomenal player. He could get pushed down because of the other backs in this that could potentially be in this draft, if he were to come out. For USF, I also like senior wide receiver number 87 Rodney Adams as a potential late sleeper. 11 a.m. on ESPN, LSU at Florida, another game that could be affected by Hurricane Matthew. For this game, it's all about receivers versus corners for me, and it's LSU's potential first-round wide receivers, Malachi Dupree and Traven Durrell, against Florida's potential first-round cornerbacks, Jalen Tabor and Quincy Wilson. Also, Leonard Fournette, who's missed the last few games with an injury. He's supposed to be back healthy for this one. Going over my notes for this game, I count at least 25 potential draftable players that will play in this game Saturday. That's a high number. 11 a.m. on Fox Sports 1 is the Red River rivalry between Oklahoma and Texas. Texas coach Charlie Strong needs another win here and a stout defensive performance in the worst way. The Vultures, they're circling in Austin right now on him. So you want to look to see in this game if Texas's interior offensive line can handle Oklahoma's defensive tackle Charles Walker, and to see if Texas's defense can do anything to stop Oklahoma's offense. 2:30 p.m. on ESPN. Indiana at Ohio State. It's our first look at Indiana this year and their top prospect and potential top 100 offensive guard, Dan Feeney. He's going to be joined in this game by another potential top interior offensive line prospect, Ohio State's Pat Elfine. So trench battles will be the word of the day for that game. 6 p.m. on ESPN, Alabama and Arkansas. And this starts a tough stretch of games for the Tide, where they play this game at Arkansas, then they're at Tennessee, they get Texas A&M at home, a bye week, and then they're at LSU. In this game, I want to see Arkansas tight end Jeremy Sprinkle in space against Alabama's talented defensive backs. 6:30 p.m. on the SEC Network, Georgia at South Carolina. And this game might be the most affected by Hurricane Matthew. The rumor mill right now swirling that Georgia State, which had a 6 p.m. home game at the Georgia Dome scheduled for Saturday, is in the process of possibly moving that game up to a noon kickoff, in which the Georgia-South Carolina game would move from Columbia to be played in the Georgia Dome at the same time, probably, and also still on the SEC Network. Georgia's coming off a heartbreaker loss against Tennessee. If you haven't seen the highlights of this game, go look them up. I mean, it's unbelievable what happened. Georgia scores a touchdown with 10 seconds left. That was unbelievable enough, but they get 2 penalties. Tennessee gets lined up to throw a Hail Mary, and it completes it on the last play of the game. So the key for Georgia is how are they going to respond? Another question in this game is, does South Carolina start Perry Orth after he had a really nice fourth quarter against Texas A&M, in which South Carolina could not move the ball vertically at all in this game with Brandon McElwain? They put in Orth, and he has some success moving the ball down the field. 6:30 p.m. on Fox, Washington at Oregon. It's been since 2003 since Washington has beaten Oregon. Washington's going to hear how good they are all week after they throttled Stanford. Oregon's going to hear how bad it is all week after they got mauled by Washington State, in which Washington State had 400 yards rushing, which is unheard of for a Mike Leach coach team. Just incredible. If Washington can exercise their demons here against Oregon, they have a chance to they'll have a firm grip on a college football playoff berth if they were to win out. 9:30 p.m. on ESPN, Washington State's at Stanford, and surprisingly, this is my first look at Washington State this season. In the offseason, I switched from AT&T Uverse to DirecTV, and DirecTV doesn't have the Pac-12 network. Thanks, DirecTV. So I haven't. Normally, I've watched several replay games on the Pac-12 networks, but I haven't had that option this year. But of the Washington State players, I'm the highest on junior quarterback Luke Falk. For Stanford, they need to bounce back in the worst of ways this week. 9:30 p.m. on ESPNU, UNLV at San Diego State. This is just another game for me to watch Donnell Pumphrey. I really like him. We're going to close things out. Deep Fried Draft Rookie of the Week this week is Dallas Cowboys first-round pick Ezekiel Elliott, 130-plus yards and a touchdown. He's now the leading rusher in the NFL. So thanks for watching. Again, I apologize for my voice, but thanks for watching. Follow us on Twitter at Deep Fried Draft, Facebook.com/Deep Fried Draft. See you next week.